Hi, I'm Jody Wood, and I wanted to talk about a couple of my art projects today, Beauty in Transition and Choreographing Care. So, Beauty in Transition was a hair salon on wheels. We partnered with homeless shelters and volunteer hairstylists to provide free hair care for people living in homeless shelters. And this traveled around to various cities in the US. And when you're looking at hair care in terms of people experiencing homelessness, it's a very small gesture. It's not going to solve homelessness by any means, but as an art project, I see it functioning on a couple of different levels. First, it's really intended to start to break down social stigmas of touch that are keeping people who are homeless feeling isolated. So a lot of the stylists who volunteered with us, some of them had actually been homeless themselves, and so they knew perfectly what that world was like, and they knew what they were getting into. And actually, it was an opportunity for them to come full circle and serve the community that they were once part of. But there were some stylists who had never stepped foot in a shelter, and there were a lot of fears surrounding that idea, and a lot of them were afraid to even touch people without wearing gloves first, even though they didn't wear gloves when they were doing people's hair who were in their salon. But then by coming in and being part of the project, all of those abstract fears really dissipated very quickly just by having this face-to-face interaction and connection with people. I also wanted to bring up some new conversations about what are human needs really? What do we really need to survive as social creatures? And I think when poverty gets discussed, people only look at very bare physical survival, needs that people have for their physical survival, such as a bed or food or water. But we don't really think about what we need for our identity to really flourish and survive in these situations, and what we need as, far as social inclusion and privacy and all of these other ways that our identity is expressed. And as an artist, that's what I wanted to come in and try to address. So I noticed a lot of people in the shelter had cosmetology backgrounds, so they became involved as service providers. So that was a way to start to break down those one-way service hierarchies. And if somebody was coming into my project for a first time, they wouldn't really know who was homeless and who wasn't experiencing homelessness. So it was a way to start to break down those labels as well. Long hair, she got that hair, cut it all on. And my project was just temporary. It didn't continue forever. And a couple of relationships that came out of that was one salon ended up paying for a woman to get her cosmetology license, and it was a few $100s that she couldn't afford at that time. And another salon continued services after my project ended. She invited women from the shelter back into her salon once a month for free services.
Salon owner Carol Thomas says she got the idea after participating in a mobile beauty truck last summer that helped needy women.
It just opened my mind that, oh my goodness, these women are, they're real people, and, they need someone just to care for them. Right?
And she says this isn't going to be just a one-time thing.
Every month we're going to be doing this every first Sunday.
A chance once a month for women who live in uncertain and difficult conditions to feel cared for.
Some of these women have been going through such a rough patch, and we just thought it would be just great just to give them a beauty treat and have a beauty day.
When I'm talking about hair care and skin care, I'm really talking about the body as a tool for identity expression. One of the ethics of this project was to give everybody exactly what they asked for and exactly what they wanted. It wasn't about imposing a beauty standard onto anyone. This wasn't a makeover service. So through this project and working with so many different homeless shelters, I got to know the staff and some of their experiences as well. And I started to realize that these systems of poverty were not only traumatic to the people who were living in the shelters, they were also traumatic to the staff that came there to work. So I started to look at this idea of secondary trauma and explore this idea that by caring for someone who is suffering, you're absorbing some of their suffering as well, and people can actually display symptoms of PTSD. And this is a very common occurrence in homeless shelters. The burnout rate is very high and the turnover rate is really high because what it takes to go to work every day, 5 days a week, and care for hundreds of people who are experiencing homelessness, while you don't even have the resources you need to care for people in the way that you know you need to. So the burden is very, very high, and they're actually not given the support that would really make their work sustainable over the long term. And part of that is because these institutions are not funded well, and so any kind of resources they would provide to staff would actually be taking away resources that they would provide to their clients. So that's when I started to ask the question, what can I as an artist do that is going to change a little bit of the perceptions around what can make care work sustainable in these systems? I started to explore secondary trauma through video art and performance art. I was working with actors and looking at how actors have all these really great physical techniques they use to enter the stage and play a really difficult character role, hold that in their bodies, and then exit the stage and let all of that go, kind of shake out that trauma. So I was taking these techniques that actors use and also just somatic therapies, looking at all of these different physical methods that people use for metabolizing trauma. And then I created a workshop series called Choreographing Care that was really using these same principles and applying them to social workers. Choreographing Care was carving out space and time for social workers to come in and process some of the stressful circumstances that they were going through at work. But also part of my job was to pay the social workers who attended and make this a part of their paid work day. And after the project was over, there was a transition period where I handed this project over to the staff of the homeless shelter, and the staff actually ran a second version, like a follow-up version of Choreographing Care for themselves, where the staff was leading the workshops and leading some of those physical exercises. That I wanted the project to come in and provoke different ways of thinking about self-care, and the fact that social workers might have needs of their own that aren't really able to be expressed, and that people just might ignore because they're not really supported in those environments. So with Choreographing Care, I was really happy that some of the staff wanted to continue the workshops and that the upper administrators and the managers were on board with that. But even if the project didn't continue in that way, and if it had only just brought up new ways of looking at self-care within the organization, or maybe just starting to destigmatize secondary trauma and the fact that social workers and care workers do have needs of their own that also need to be addressed, that would have been, in my opinion, one way the project could have been successful as well. And it's the same with beauty and transition. I didn't want to just run this hair salon on wheels forever. It was really just about starting a dialogue and starting to change perceptions when we look at these subjects and social injustices. So I hope that gives you some idea of my intentions with these projects, and I would love to hear from you. I'm going to be available on chat all day, so I hope we can have a really great discussion. And thank you very much.